Hello, it's Duncan. There comes a point in most code bases where we're forced to choose between consistency and complexity. Do we double down on the existing way of doing things, or make a special case to simplify some new feature? Our 10-pin bowling simulator is an experiment in type-driven design and making illegal states unrepresentable. When faced with what to do with the special cases in scoring the final frame, we have to make a choice between the consistent complexity of adding more types, or simply adding more behaviour to our existing types. In this case, I chose consistency, meaning that we gained several new frame types. By the end, I think we're functionally complete, but we do need one more pass through the code to see if anything simpler is trying to get out. Okay then, I don't think we can put it off any longer. It's time to think about the final frame. In the final frame, you can roll one extra ball if you roll a strike or a spare. And the final frame scorecard has space for that, so it will look like that. Now we've got a lot of final frames in our tests. Luckily, or rather deliberately, they happen more quickly than they might do because we're able to specify how many frames are in a game. But we're going to need to fix up all of our tests at once. So if I undo that last change, we can say that all of our unplayed final frames are going to end like that. As soon as they're played, then they're going to have a score. But when they don't have a score, they're an unplayed final frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and select all of those, and there are quite a few, and then just go and edit them with the space for the last ball. And now if I run the tests, that will fail in the way that we expect. That is to say, we're not rendering a space for the last ball. Okay, so let's go and look at where we are rendering the scoreboard. It'll be in here, and it's to scorecard. And here we say line to scorecard, and line to scorecard gets frames to scorecard. A list of frames to scorecard does the maths of scoring, and then finally calls frame to scorecard, and this is where we render a normal unplayed frame. Now we have no way in this rendering to know that this frame is the final one. We don't have an index for it or anything like that, but we could have a different type. And I think that's probably the way to go, because also we think the behaviour is going to be different in the final frame to a normal unplayed frame. So let's go to unplayed frame, and I'm just going to duplicate this to give us an unplayed final frame. Now if I try to compile, there are a number of our when expressions that now need an extra branch because we have a new type of frame. So let's add those in. This is the one we really want, actually. It's an unplayed final frame. Well, that wants to look like the unplayed frame, except have a space for an extra roll. Let's find the next issue. Okay, frame total pin count. Well, let's add a branch for that. And you can see a pattern here. We're just always asking this total pin count. Any more? Okay, roll 1 for a frame. We need that in order to calculate spares. And I think an unplayed final frame doesn't have a roll 1. Okay, let's build that. Good, it builds and runs. But it still doesn't pass. And it still doesn't pass because we're not actually creating an unplayed final frame. Where do we create normal unplayed frames? So let's find out. We'll find the constructor of this. There we are. When we create a game, our constructor for game creates a playable line with a list of unplayed frames. So what we want to do is we want to make the last unplayed frame an unplayed final frame. And I think this list constructor here, this init, this block here, actually takes the index. So if we say this is the index, and we can say if index is the frame count minus 1, which is the last index in the list because they're 0 based, then we want an unplayed final frame, else we want a normal unplayed frame. Just lay that out a bit better so we can see it on screen. Does it work? Well, that's closer, but it looks like we're still rendering a score here in our unplayed final frame. So where is that? Back in scoring, here we see the score string is an empty string if it's an unplayed frame, but we need to add in or frame is unplayed final frame. Now we could add an interface for final frame, so we could just ask one question, but I think that will be okay for now. Let's try. Good. This line's got a bit too long. I often find that a when fits a bit better. So if we make that into a when, the score string is when the frame is an unplayed frame or an unplayed final frame, it's that, else that. Oh, that's quite nice. And still passes. Okay then, so that's an unplayed final frame. What's next? Well, I guess that's an in progress final frame, and we can see one of those here. So let's go and fix that. That's a harder edit to do everywhere it's appropriate, so let's just go and find the other places. So this is an in progress final frame, and here this is an in progress final frame, as is this one. I think that's probably it, but we'll find out when we've implemented that. So let's run the test to check they fail. Yes, they do. Now I actually use the phrase in progress final frame, so that suggests that maybe that's a thing. Let's go to frames. We've got in progress frame here. Let's just duplicate that to give us an in progress final frame. Now how do we get to be an in progress final frame? Well, I guess the answer is that any progression from an unplayed final frame is to an in progress final frame, at least for now. So let's just change that to that and see how we go. And once again, we get a scoreboard issue. So we can, I think, just duplicate our in progress frame to say this is our in progress final frame. And that's going to be the roll one and then the space for the very last roll. There'll be another compiler, I guess, here. And now our in progress final frame. We'll just say it's pin count. You may remember from last week's episode that this oddness is because pin count is defined in the frames themselves, so we can change its type from either just a pin count for normal frames or a score or something else for our final frame. Okay, any more issues? One last one. The pin count, the roll one of a in progress final frame is its roll one. Run. That's pleasing. What's next? Let's look down our tests. Okay, here we have a situation where we scored a spare in our final frame. Now obviously we are going to have to address that because this is a case where we should be able to bowl another ball. But I think I'd like to address that later, so I think I'm just going to change this to be a gutter ball or a miss. And so the total score will be 3 plus 9 is 12. And that will carry on down to here. So there will not be a ball in the final frame. And here. And we also need to fix up Barney to give him 10 points. Looking down the next one, here we scored a 1 and a 2. There won't be another ball, so we'll stay at 16. Spares, well, we rendered those only in the first frame here. That's good, so let's just put that in there. Okay, so these all have in common that they are completed final frames. If we run the tests, they will fail, but we can go and add ourselves into frames. We've got normal completed frame, and I think we should have normal completed final frame. How do we get into that state? Well, I guess it's in progress final frame. We'll end up with a normal completed final frame. And now if we build, we'll have some more whens. So the scorecard for a normal completed final frame will be it scorecard, which doesn't exist yet. Go and have a look at this one. Well, I think for now we might just duplicate that as normal completed final frame and just add in the space for the last roll. One more. Normal completed final frame is pin count. Any more? Okay, and then roll one for a normal completed frame, final frame is again it's roll one. Let's try running that. Oh, one issue. Where is that? Looks like we missed something on Fred. Let's have a look. Oh, of course, this only happens if we rolled a 0. We can't just fix up the rendering. Good. Okay then, now the bit we've all been waiting for, and that's strikes and spares in the final game. I think spares might be slightly easier. So let's go and find our render spares. Here it is. Let's duplicate this as render final frame spares. And I think the final frame is more than just rendering because it actually affects the game mechanics. We're going to get an extra roll. So let's just say this is final frame spares. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. We rolled a 9 and a 1, so that's a spare in the first frame. And now we've got to roll a spare in the second frame. Previously we rolled a 2 and a 3, so maybe let's roll a 2 and a 7. That will add up to 10. So now that's 2 and that's 7. But I think that should probably render as a slash for the spare. So the score for the previous frame is still 12, and now we've got 12 plus 10 should be a score of 22. But that should not be a completed game. That should be a playable game because we've got another ball. And now if we roll that ball, well, we've got some choices here. Let's roll a 5. We think that should end up as a completed game. We should put the 5 in here. And I think that 5 should count twice. It should count once to be added in for the score for the spare, and again for its actual self. So that, I think, makes a score of 32. I think there's very little chance of these tests passing, but we'll run them just to check they fail in the way we expect. And yes, the only one that's failed is final frame spares. That's good. And it's failed because we're not currently a playable game after the second spare. Well, I think that's what we were expecting. How can we make it happen? Well, we know that the change is in the transition from an incomplete final frame where we rolled. So let's go to our frames, find, yes, InProgressFinalFrame, here we are. And at the moment that says we're going to go to a normal completed frame. And then the code in the line will see that a normal completed frame is a completed frame and it will end the game. We don't want to complete the game in this situation. So the question is, I suppose, do we reuse InProgressFinalFrame and give it the option of a second roll or create a new type? Well, so far we've been creating new types, so let's go with that. Duplicate InProgressFinalFrame, and we'll say this is, let's call it BonusInProgressFinalFrame. Now we know that that will have 2 rolls, both of which are pin count, and we know it also still will be playable. And now when do we want to transition to that? Well, let's put a when in here. This becomes our normal case. But we have a special case of roll 1 plus pin count equals a score of 10. In that case, we are going to go on to our bonus in progress final frame with our roll 1 and our current pin count. Be interesting to try that. Let's run. But as usual, when we've added a type, we need to add it into here. So let's see what we can get right. A bonus in progress final frame. What's that going to look like? Well, I think maybe we'll do just enough. So it's going to look something like this, where that's our roll 1, and at the moment we're only working on a spare, so let's put that in there. Any more? Of course there are. A bonus in progress final frames pin count. Well, that's interesting. Let's see what we said for pin count. We've messed it up here. This should, at the moment at least, be roll 1 plus 2. Back, and that will be this dot total pin count. We have an interesting compile issue there. This total pin count here is a score, whereas total pin count in other cases is a roll. Now I think this is a place where the type system is actually working for us, because it is true that in the final frame both this roll 1 and this roll 2 can add up to more than 10. So let's go back and see that the issue here is that all of these others are pin count, but this one is score. So we don't know that we can call dot value on all of them. Little bit irritating. What I think we're going to do is we're going to say, just go to all of these and take their dot value in place. Does that compile? Not quite. One more, and a bonus in progress final frame has a roll 1, so this can say this dot roll 1. Now it looks like we're still not there. Why is that? We've completed the game for some reason. Let's have a look at bonus in progress final frame. It is a playable frame. That's interesting. But I'm an idiot. 2 and 7 doesn't add up to 10. We need to make this 8 here. Run that. Okay. Now, where's this failing? It's failing on rendering the final completed frame. And in fact, you see the issue here. This bonus in progress final frame isn't passing its roll through to the normal completed frame, and that's why we are not seeing that in there. I think I'm going to double down on the types and say that we need a bonus completed final frame. So this is our normal one, but a bonus completed final frame will have 3 rolls. Now, is spare looks as if it will come in handy, but our total pin count now is going to have to take into account roll 3. So I'm going to say plus roll 3 dot value, and we know that we can't hold that in a pin count, so that's going to be a score. Now we've got bonus completed final frame. We know we're going to have to do some fixing up for our types. Frame to scorecard. Well, the bonus completed final frame now. Our completed final frames have all been a bit complicated, so I think we'll do the same thing. We'll add an extension just to render that. Normal completed final frame. We will duplicate to have bonus completed final frame. And now that gives us a place to put in roll 3. We'll have to make total pin count work. Add the remaining branch and but. We know that this is, as with all the others, this dot total pin count value, because we're wanting an int. And one more here. Roll 1. Well, that's always roll 1. Let's see. I wonder whether we're transitioning to bonus completed final frame at all. Let's have a look. So we know in this case we're going to be going from a bonus in progress final frame. Here we are. We didn't make that change. That should be a bonus completed final frame of roll 1, roll 2, and the pin count. And now our rendering seems to be working, but our scoring isn't. I'm not sure that surprises me. Let's go and have a look. Okay, then here we are in frame to scorecard, and this is where we're doing the scoring. And you can see that our handling for spares here only applies to normal completed frames. I think we might just add a case for being the bonus completed frame. First of all, let's change this to a when. And now we can say frame is bonus completed final frame and frame is spare. And I think the thing that we want to add in here to our score is the frames total pin count plus the last roll again. Let's just have a go. Well, that's unexpected, and unexpected enough, I think, for me to set a breakpoint in there and try and see what we actually have. Okay, so our score at this point is 27. How has that happened? Oh, I see. We'd already added in the frames total pin count up here. So we don't need to do it twice. This is just the bonus pieces. So let's take that out of there. Quit this and try again. Phew. Check that with all the tests. And we are getting somewhere. I think it's time for my lunch, so I'm going to check this in so I don't lose it with FinalFrame spares. Good. Okay then. While I was having lunch, I thought I'd do some actual research about how the FinalFrame is scored. And it turns out that, at least according to friesforfun.com, that was wrong about the FinalFrame. So in the FinalFrame, if you roll a strike, you get 2 more shots. if you roll a spare, you get one more shot, but your score for the frame is only the total number of pins knocked down. So in this example here, there was 129, and the final frame scored 9 and 1 and a 10, which is 20, and so the score for the final frame was only that 20, which is the total of all the pins. That means that my score here is too high, because I had added the 5 in because we scored a spare, and then I'd added the 5. So the actual score for that frame, we made 10, but should have been only 5, so the total should only be 27. Let's run that. It unsurprisingly fails, and I guess the issue is here, we were adding back in roll 3, but we'd already added in roll 3 as part of the total pin count for the bonus completed final frame, which is a spare. So I think we can simplify things by getting rid of that and pass our tests. Good. I think I'm going to check that in as correcting score for final frame spares. Okay, good. I also did the research for what that should mean for a run of strikes, and here's a test I prepared earlier. Let's have a look at it. You can see we're going to play 4 frames, and that's in order that we can test strikes accumulating across final frames and not final frames. And you can see a nice pattern here. We keep on rolling 10s. We get 10, 20, 30, 30, 50, 60, 30, 60, 80, 90, and so on. Now we don't have any code for this, so let's see where it fails first. Okay, there we go, and the answer is, well, it's failed earlier than I might have expected. Let's see where. We actually scored only 20 here, where we should have scored 30. Let's see if we can work out why that is. Here in our scoring then, here we go. When the frame's a strike, we go to the next frame and we add the total pin count. But in the case where we failed, we've only been to this frame and added its 10, rather than both the next 2 rolls. So we should have got this 10 and this 10 to make 30, but we didn't. Okay then. What we actually need to do in the case of a strike is to find the next 2 rolls. So I think I'm going to split this up a bit. We'll say, let's find the next frame. That's this at index plus 1. And given that strike is not a last frame, I think there always has to be a frame after it. Now then, the next roll is our next frame, roll 1. But remember, that might not exist because our next frame may not have been played yet. If there isn't a next roll, then there's not going to be a next roll. So I think I'm just going to put in an if here and say if next roll is not equal to null, then we're going to do some things. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the next roll into our score. Okay then, where is the roll after that? If we have a next roll, we may have a next roll. And it may be the next frame's roll 2. There's only one problem, and that's that we don't have a roll 2 method. But let's create ourselves an extension property as we did for roll 1. And I think this is going to return a pin count. Now if we move it down here under our frame roll 1, we can just take all these implementations. Oh, missed a bit. And now we'll see which frames have a roll 2. A normal completed frame, does that have a roll 2? Yes, it does. A normally completed final frame, does that have a roll 2? Yes, it does. A strike, does that have a roll 2? Well, it appears to, but that's just calling this, so that's no good to us. That would just result in a Stack Overflow. So a strike doesn't really have a roll 2, and that reminds us that roll 2 must be nullable. Okay, does an InProgressFrame have a roll 2? No, it doesn't. So that's null. An InProgressFinalFrame, does that have a roll 2? Not yet, because we've only rolled once on it, so that's null. Unplayed frames, whether they're final or not, they don't have a roll 2. But our bonus in progress final frame, well, I think that should have a role too. We're in the bonus territory now. And yes, indeed, there it is. Good. And then our bonus completed final frame, I think that may well have a role too as well. And in fact, it has a role 3. Now, I'm not sure I like this extension here. Maybe it would be better if it was actually a property of the frame. But we can come and fix that up later. We should at least be compiling now. And R here. So now we've got a next roll, which may be null. If it is null though, for example, in the case where we're scoring this and this is a strike, so it doesn't have a next roll, it may be that our next frame has the roll we want. So I think we should say that if that is null, then we're going to go on to the next frame, which may not exist. So that's get or null index plus 2. And if that is there and it has a roll 1, we can use that. Is there a case where we should be using roll 3? Well, I don't think so, because that would only apply to this strike here. That would be the one that would pick up this roll 3, and we know that in fact this strike here doesn't gain any extra points. Okay, so I think we could then say if next roll is not equal to null, then we've got some more score to accumulate, and that is the next roll. Let's have a go, shall we? Oh, but I left this line in from last time. Have another go. Right, that seems a bit better. Let's have a look where we failed. And the answer is that here we ended up as a not playable game. Why is that? Well, because of our types, we can infer that we have rolled into an unplayed final frame here. So we go over to frames, find unplayed final frame, and here we still got that if you roll 10 we transition to a strike. That was left over from our copy of unplayed frame, but I don't think it applies at all. I think an unplayed final frame should always just go to an in progress final frame. So let's just remove that and see how that affects things. Okay, now where is this stopped? Well, looking at this, all of our scores are right. It's just we've rendered a strike as a 10, not an X. I think given our domain, we might reasonably go to our pin count and say that if we're rendering 0 as a dash, we should render 10 as an X. Try that. Okay, we're getting closer, but now here we've rolled 10 and we failed the requirement. We scored too high in a normal completed final frame. But I don't think we should ever have been a normal completed final frame. So that suggests we have a problem in our in progress final frame. Have a look for that. In progress final frame here. Here it looks like we over-specified. We said that we're a bonus in progress final frame if the total score is 10, but here the total score is 20. We'd put this in to catch the spare, but I think probably we should just say that if the roll 1 plus the pin count value is greater than or equal to 10, then we go into our bonus final frame. Run again. And now we seem to be failing because we're rendering a slash. Well, that's obviously just in the rendering, so let's have a look. Not any of those. Here we are, bonus in progress completed final frame. We hard coded the slash in that. I suppose we might reasonably make this an extension to scorecard and then pull it down under these others to give us a pattern. That will almost certainly be true of this one as well. And now this, I suppose we can just pull this expression here into the place of the slash. Except that we don't appear to have a bonus in progress final frame is spare. We do have bonus completed final frame is spare though. So let's go and have a look at that. And I think we could probably copy that into bonus in progress final frame like that. Try that. And we're still failing. But something else. This is can't roll invalid pin counts. Let's have a look. And we're saying that if we roll a 9 and a 2, that would be an illegal argument. But I suppose now this game with a frame count of 1, we're actually rolling into the final frame. So I think we'd have to change that like that. And goodness me, everything's passing. Well, let's not look that gift horse in the mouth. I think we should commit it with scoring final frame strikes. Good. It feels to me like we're functionally finished with just due diligence on odd scoring patterns, that sort of thing still to do. Plus a number of places like this where adding to the score and adding to the score and so on is all a bit tacky, really. I'm sure there'll be inconsistencies, like for example I notice here already this is get or null, whereas this is just a getter. But in both these cases I think we should be able to just use a get. But I'm tired and I think that should wait until next time. Thinking about why I'm tired, I realise that working top down like this, adding functionality like scores to the whole system rather than implementing scoring from the bottom up, personally I do find that more tiring. Maybe even with the test, I think it's the increased risk of breaking something that is already working or not having covered a pathological little case. So I am going to stop there rather than powering through, and we'll pick this up for hopefully one final time next week. If you'd like to see that episode, then please subscribe, like this video so YouTube knows you mean it, and you could help fund this work and get something in return if you bought a copy of the book that I wrote in that price called Java to Kotlin: A Refactoring Guidebook, details of which are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching.